Hey guys, Manitove here. What we're going to be doing today is going over the exciting patch notes that were just dropped last night about the unit balancing that's going to be taking place pretty soon. So let's hop on in and take a look. First thing we're going to see is the Dark Dragon Knight is getting a nerf. It's reducing the amount of attack bar gain per critical hit by 5%. Uh, in AoE situations, this is going to be a 20% reduction in the attack bar that they would normally get. Pretty big change. I don't see it limiting the viability of Ragdoll, but it is going to be a little bit more easily managed now when someone picks it in a RTA or if you happen to run into it on a arena defense. But they are adding a 15% reflect damage back to the enemy when he's attacked. So a little trade-off. I don't see the reflect damage being that big of an impact, especially at such a low rate, because most people will probably take a shield unit into that in the first place. The next change is going to be Wind Hell Lady. It used to have a threshold of 30% or less before it would proc the stun on the skill 3. They're increasing that to 50% or less. It's going to make it more of a viable CC unit, more reliable stun, but we all know Theomars is still going to proc out of that anyways. The next change is Water Chimera, the skill Crush, which I believe is S3. Beforehand, it would just do AoE damage and have the possibility of freezing the target you attacked. Now it will reduce attack bars by 50% on enemies not targeted by the skill. Pretty nice change. It allows for turn disruption and a little attack bar manipulation, so that's great. I don't see it really changing how people use this unit entirely. I mean, it will be more effective now in Guild Wars and Siege, but because of its squishiness, still not really a viable RTA pick. The next one will be Fire Chimera. The Collapse ability will have an added effect of removing one beneficial effect. Might solve some problems on defense where people were just putting up Chloe and sniping the unit. This way, if it happens to cut, it can strip and taunt. So, minor nuisance, but not that big of a change. I don't see the viability of the Fire Chimera changing all that much. The next is the Light Oracle, Start and End. I believe that is the S3 for that unit. Beforehand, it would I believe it would cleanse, grant invincibility, and then heal over time. So now they're adding immunity to one turn. Not too bad. Wind Phoenix, Tempest, increases the damage by 8% on its S3. It's already used for speed clearing, for food farming, and some people use it in Giant Speed 10. Overall, not a high efficiency unit that most people... You'll never see it in RTA unless someone's just trying to speed cleave you. Fire Panda Warrior. Beforehand, it would have the chance of putting one of 3 random debuffs on you with its S3. Now it's going to force static debuffs, each keyed into a specific attack. In the sequence. So the first attack will do HP recovery, second attack will be doing glancing hits, and then attack power and speed decrease. It's just going to make it more reliable for R5 beginner teams, and also if you're running a specific Guild Wars offense or Siege offense that requires debuffs for the damage. So it's going to... You might see a little bit more Brandia or Crow 2A Guild Wars or Siege offenses in the future, but I don't see that being too big of an impact. It just makes it a little bit more reliable for the debuffs. And they're adding an extra debuff, which always helps. The next change that I'm super excited for is the Wind Paladin. Used to be grants immunity who have full HP for 2 turns. Now it will grant immunity on allies with half or more HP. The check for this, unless they're changing it in this modification, which they haven't notated, is after the heal. The Paladin's S3 puts up a shield, grants the immunity after the heal for the status check. So it's going to be easier for you to get immunity with the Paladin S3, which we already know a very well-built Wind Paladin on siege defense or guild war defense is mightily annoying. So this is just going to make it even more burdensome to take on in defenses. But if you've seen my videos before, I do rely on this unit for my Guild Wars offenses, pairing with Bulwark and Molong, so this is going to make that a lot more reliable in the future. I'm really looking forward to that one. Water Demon, Repeated Nightmare, which is the passive. Added effect: when reviving, creates a shield that is proportionate to its level for 1 turn. Very underwhelming buff. It's going to make his survivability after he reses a little bit more viable, but if he gets cut by a Lauren or any one of the snipers that ignores shield, or any unit that ignores shield, or it needs to be granted a turn when it revives, otherwise the viability of the unit is still very limited. Fire Demon, Flames of Hell. It eases the condition of granting continuous damage that's proportionate to the damage dealt, which just means the threshold for damage being dealt to add continuous damage was too high, so they lowered it, and they're increasing the damage dealt by 8%. So you may get an extra dot. Dark Sea Emperor, King of the Ruins. Decreases the HP of all enemies except the target by 30% of the damage dealt after every attack. So nice buff. It's going to do AoE damage. You're not going to ever pair this with the sleep unit because it's going to wake everything up. But I don't see a big uptick in the people using Dark Sea Emperor because he's required to be on an attack damage attack build, and he's very squishy. Unicorn, Mystical Creature. This is in pony form. For the water one, Protection of Wings, added an effect to the passive. It recovers 10% of its HP each turn, so it's going to be a little bit more annoying on defense, a little bit more viable on offense. It's basically a little mini Raccoony for itself. Unicorn, Mystical Creature, for fire, Eternal Flames passive, recovers 10% of your HP when you attack on your turn. So it is a mini Iris for itself. Makes it a little bit more viable and makes the change to human form, or makes staying in pony form more viable. So when you're toggling back and forth, I don't see that really changing the effectiveness of the Fire Unicorn. The light one, Purifying Light. This is the one that I believe removes, cleanses, and grants immunity or defense, something like that. I don't have a light pony, so excuse me for my lack of knowledge on it. But it's going to heal all allies now by 10%. Trying to make the light pony a little bit more viable. It's a little underwhelming as a unit as is. Dark Unicorn, Moonlight Flash. It now has a 100% critical rate when it attacks. So, not a bad little buff for that. Just remember, it is 100% critical rate, not a guaranteed critical hit. One of the families that is getting buffed is the succubus. Pretty excited about this because I do have the light and dark built and have been toying with the water one for a while on whether or not I'm going to build that, just because it has a speed lead. But let's go ahead and take a look. Water one, Parting Gift. Absorbs enemy attack bar is being increased to 20%. I believe this hits 4 times, so that's 80% attack bar absorption. Just makes this unit more viable in RTA. You're going to see a lot more of the water succubus in the future, I believe. Fire succubus, Brutal End, effect change. Used to disturb HP recovery for 2 turns, and now it's going to increase skill cooldowns by 2 turns. So you're going to get a little mini CC and control. Pretty nice. Wind succubus, Blooming Nightmare. This one would randomly attack people and put dots on it. It now deals 50% more damage and increases the duration of sleep by 1 turn up to 3 turns. Before the last patch to the succubuses, they would wake up targets under sleep. Now none of the succubuses wake up on any skill unit under sleep. So this just makes it more viable to pair with Hathor. So you might see a little bit more of the wind succubus in the RTA meta. Not much. People will toy around with it for a bit. Still a squishy unit, and beyond the skill 3, I don't think it will be very viable. Light succubus, Curse of the White Knight. Now it puts enemies to sleep for 1 turn. We all remember that this was a Hall of Heroes unit from like 4 years ago. Was a TOA staple for a while. Because in addition to putting things to sleep, it also had an AoE glancing and an AoE slow debuff. So that's a pretty nice buff for the light succubus, and once again with the AoE sleep for 1 turn, makes it more viable, especially in sleep comps and RTA. Dark succubus, Night Hag Scuttle. Used to deal damage proportionate to the enemy's max HP, which limited its viability in certain instances because, once again, because if Comtuos does everything with a RTA mindset, the max HP over time diminishes and the attack power increases if the match goes on for too long in RTA, which this unit would become less and less effective. It's now dealing damage proportionate to the enemy's attack speed. So it makes it a little bit more viable for RTA. Still don't see its effectiveness being overall that great, but once again, with certain comps, like sleep comps, that you do see some people running in RTA, and even as Guild War offenses, makes it a little bit more viable. And the next family to getting a little buff is the jackolanterns. So for everyone that's done a Hall of Heroes in October for the last 5 years, you're finally getting your buffs. But I'm pretty sure most of you, much like me, have eaten most of these. The water jackalantern, Cunning, increases the speed value according to the number of beneficial effects. So he's going to get faster when he steals buffs. I gotta wait to see what the increased value is before I get hyped about that, because if it's a significant increase, he will become a lot better. He's already an effective counter for some siege defenses that you see out there, especially with the Fire Paladin, or any comp that relies heavily on buffs. So, pretty good buff for him. Fire Jack-o'-lantern, Fire Starter. He used to attack all enemies 2 times, each having a 50% chance to decrease the target's attack power and HP recovery for 2 turns. Now it attacks all enemies. The first attack will have a 75% chance to inflict continuous damage for 1 turn. The second attack has a 25% chance to increase the duration. So he's like a little mini Pang, which was this week's Hall of Heroes, but only for continuous damage and a much less viable chance to increase it. Really not all that impressive. Fire and Light, Ghostly Appearance. Used to increase the chance of glancing hits for 2 turns with a 30% chance, is now breaking defense for a 30% chance. Not reliable, still not that great, not all that impressed by that. Wind, Shadow of the Moon, grants a shield equivalent to 20% of your max HP for 1 turn. Now decreased to 10%, but it does it for all allies. Most people weren't building him HP, so it's just, yeah. No one's going to be using Windy. Jack-o'-lantern Light, long waiting, becomes immune to inability effects. Also, your attack power is increased for 20%. By 20% for each beneficial effect. Your speed increases according to the number of harmful effects granted on yourself. They've changed that to your attack power is increased up to 150% whenever an enemy turn ends. So basically, if they're a proc heavy or a speed team and you're a slow bruiser, you have a chance to stack up to 150%. I don't see anyone using the light jackal. Dark, Knight's Comfort, shield, target changed. Used to be if he didn't attack on his turn, I believe he granted a shield on himself. Now it's on all allies. Still in storage or food. Water Sylph, Cyclone. When you attack an enemy under the decrease attack speed effect, it reduces the attack bar from is going up to 75% from 50%. He's already not a staple RTA unit, but he is a niche pick for certain comps. He's going to be more viable there. He's also going to be more viable on arena offense just because of more CC or attack bar manipulation. So pretty good change for the Water Sylph. Next family getting a little buff is the Taoist, which, hey, I'll take it. I like the Taoist. First one is Water, Deconstruct Evil. It has an added effect now. Has a 35% chance to strip a beneficial effect. I believe this hit is either a 3 or 4 turn hit in the first place, so pretty good chance to strip. And they're increasing the chance to break defense up 10% more to 35%. This unit isn't very PvP meta at all, but it is highly effective for beginners in TOA. Fire Taoist, Flame Ascension skill cooldown, increasing activation chance is up to 50%. Okay, still not using the Fire Taoist. Wind Taoist, this is the one that piqued my interest. Decreases the cooldown time of all allies by 1 turn. Doesn't affect itself, but they are reducing the cooldown time innately by 1 turn. What made the Wind Taoist so viable was in TOA, he was like a mini Varad. If you didn't happen to have that, and if you paired it with Mav, who has a skill cooldown increasing ability himself, or decreasing ability, the turn cycling was pretty fast. Now what he's going to do is, if you run this same combo, essentially nothing in TOA should ever move, because between Mav's cooldown and this cooldown, each one of your other units' CC abilities should always be off cooldown. So pretty nice buff. Really effective for beginning and mid-game players in TOA. Dark Taoist Secret Visit. For those of you that have been following me for a long time know that Dark Taoist was a staple in my TOA team, TOA Hard. Really like the unit. They're changing his Secret Visit ability. It used to stun the enemy with the highest attack bar. Now it's a targeted stun. It makes it a little bit more effective and reliable. If you're trying to just keep a unit CC'd that would disrupt your turn order. So, not too bad of a buff. Outside of TOA though, or Hall of Heroes, not most people are going to use this unit. Warbearers. The Water 1 Spirit Will is getting a revive increase to half HP, opposing to 30% HP. It's already a tanky unit, pretty fun to use, so not really changing its viability all that much though. Thrash, increasing the damage up to 200% when counterattacking. Pretty solid buff. Still not going to see a big spike in the use of this unit, but not a bad buff. Fire is also getting a 100% chance to provoke on its skill 3, so I think its skill 3 breaks attack, AoE provokes, and then it's going to do 100% more damage when it counterattacks. Good retool for the Fire Bear. Light. Risky Dash increases the damage by 100%. This unit was found to be very underwhelming, so we'll see if the damage increase is worth 2Aing the Light Warbear. Alright, Water Pixie, Shooting Star, decreased by 1 turn. And the 2A is getting another cooldown and increasing the damage by 10%. Now, Water Pixie is already a fun unit. It's not really meta in anything, but might make it a little bit more viable as a counter pick with the cooldown reduction, because 4 turns and 3 turns was a long time to wait. Fire Pixie, Incinerate. Used to a single target, now it attacks all, and the damage is going to be reduced because it's an AoE. 2A Pixie, Holy Call. When reviving a dead ally, it would revive it at 15%, and now it's going to be 30%, and it already has an ability, I believe, that when it revives the unit, all skills are off cooldown, and the reviving is random. So not really meta changing, but a fun toy. I will probably look at building one, and you might see a video on it in the next couple of weeks. Dark Pixie, Energy Absorb, and the second Awakened version are both being modified. It used to attack 3 times. Now it's 2. They're not changing the damage calculation or total on it. Just going to be a little bit more increased damage per hit. They're adding an effect. Beforehand, it was the nice thing about the unit was it hit 3 times, and each strike had a chance of putting one of the skills on cooldown for 1 turn. So now you're only going to see the maximum of a 2-turn cooldown reset. But if it's already on, when it does a decrease by 1 turn, it will decrease itself, the cooldown on itself by 1 turn. So that's not too bad. Increases the viability. I honestly think more people will use the 2A Pixie. You're going to see it more in Guild Wars and Siege, and as a niche pick in RTA. This is the big buff that I am super excited about. The Fire Dragon Knight, once again, for those that have followed me for a long time. Most of my content used to be very Leica related, and then he was nerfed, and then he was nerfed again, and then they sort of said they buffed him but didn't buff him, and then they said they buffed him again, and then we were like, okay, he's not meta anymore, it's just terrible. And then the last patch, they gave Justice the ability to ignore shields. So it was a slight buff, but still not all that drastically changing. And now I think they finally got it right. They're not bringing back the stun, unfortunately, but they are removing the awakening into resistance, which never made much sense for any unit because, you know, resistance is a myth anyways. And they're strengthening Dragon's Might. Dragon's Might, strengthened skill effect, recovers 50% of the damage inflicted, has 50% recovery for HP of the damage inflicted. Pretty solid buff. It's going to make him a lot more sustainable. I do not think it's going to really shift the dynamic in RTA for him, but for Guild Wars, Guild Siege, he's going to be a lot more sustainable and viable. Oracle Light, the awakening effect is, instead of being awakening in accuracy, they are increasing the chance to strip up to 90%. With 1 skill up goes up to 100%. And then it will, instead of inflicting continuous damage for 2 turns, it's going to decrease the attack speed. Some skill errors, apparently a lot of issues with counterattacking, not applying things in the proper order. And that looks like a lot of that's just being fixed. And then there was an issue with the not getting a turn after damage was nullified for some reason or another, so they're fixing that issue. Turn acquisition being abnormally not working as intended due to passive skill activation. And they specifically called out the wind harp, the water paladin, and the dark giant warrior. So we'll see how that plays into effect, because there were certain instances I know you could bypass Triana's passive when attacking on offense. So we'll see how that works out. And here's the lead that was buried all the way at the end a couple months ago. I know you guys have seen that I went on a little bit of a rant about the AI in Summoner's War, how terrible it is, and how I felt that they were doing a disservice to the community by basically stealing people's time and money for those pay-to-win players that like to just farm all day. Basically, the AI would cause AI derps, is what I called them. Basically, you would wipe for no other reason than the AI was just that terrible. All skill attacks, Dungeon AI. The AI has been improved to use skills that attack all enemies more frequently when there are 3 or more enemy monsters. Alright, what does this mean? That means that 100% of the people that play this game use Lucian in every aspect of dungeon farming. So he will use his skill 3 amputation magic more frequently in giants, in dragons, in necro. And also if you're using them in speed clears for Hall of Heroes and in TOA. So just a very big quality of life improvement for everyone that has been basically demanding this change for 5 years, because the AI has been terrible. And it wasn't for a lack of skill of team building. It was literally Comtuous being inept in this aspect of having proper AI that made dungeons more challenging than they were even supposed to be. Excuse me. So with this little quality of life change, dungeon farming will be more highly effective. Now people will be more motivated to actually farm these dungeons in the hopes of acquiring the runes needed for more in-game content. So I'm really looking forward to this balance patch. If you guys see anything I missed or have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comments below. Was really hyped for that Leica buff, but after rereading it, not as hyped about it as I first was. Let's go ahead and see how it plays out. Seeing how it's only impacting the Dragon's Might skill, not the Justice skill, and it's not the Noble passive, or Noble Blood passive. I think it might actually play out a little bit less effectively than I was hoping. So, you get to see my live reaction to a thought. Hit me up, hit like on the video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.